The more you push something away, the stronger it becomes. We've all lived through moments we'd rather forget, moments of shame, fear, failure. We've all succeeded in some ways, but we've also fallen. We've been strong, but we've also known weakness. The real question is, what do we do with all of it? Most people suppress their past, bury their pain, and try to move forward as if their dark side doesn't exist. But no matter how much you ignore it, your shadow never disappears. It lingers beneath the surface, shaping your thoughts, reactions, and self-image. Shadow work is not about becoming better. It's about becoming whole. It's about looking at yourself fully, your light and darkness, your strength and shame, and embracing every part of it. Because until you do, you will always be at war with yourself. If you want true inner peace, creativity, kindness, compassion, and joy, you must first understand your shadow and learn to accept it. Not run from it, not fight it. Accept it, integrate it, celebrate it. What if everything happening in your life right now was guiding you to step out of your smallness and into your greatest potential? Because you can't fight darkness with darkness, but you can switch on the light, and once you do, you will experience more love and freedom than you ever imagined. But where exactly does this darkness hide? There are parts of yourself you've been conditioned to reject. Anger, envy, insecurity, desire, the thoughts you suppress, the impulses you deny, the emotions you tell yourself you shouldn't feel. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the side of you that remains hidden, not because it doesn't exist, but because you refuse to acknowledge it. The shadow is the person we'd rather not be. From the moment we are born, we are taught which parts of us are acceptable and which are not. As children, we seek love, approval, and belonging, so we learn to suppress the aspects of ourselves that might lead to rejection. If expressing anger led to punishment, you learned to repress it. If showing vulnerability made you feel weak, you learned to hide it. If you were told to always be good, you buried your selfish impulses. Over time, this shadow becomes a hidden force, influencing your behaviors, relationships, and decisions, without you even realizing it. You are not just carrying your own darkness. You are carrying the weight of an entire society's suppressed fears, guilt, and unhealed wounds. Carl Jung warned that when entire groups of people deny their collective darkness, it doesn't disappear. It erupts in destructive ways. This is the collective shadow, the hidden force shaping history, politics, and culture without most people ever realizing it. Deepak Chopra explains that we can see the collective shadow in the world's most extreme social and political conflicts. It manifests in corrupt politicians who preach justice but exploit power, religious leaders who speak of love but create division, war waged in the name of peace, the us versus them mentality that fuels racism, extremism, and social injustice, societal denial of environmental destruction, global warming ignored until it becomes catastrophic. Everything we suppress as individuals, we unconsciously build into our collective systems. How does the collective shadow influence you? Have you ever found yourself blindly following a belief system, whether political, religious, or cultural, without questioning if it truly aligns with who you are? Do you feel pressured to pick a side, define yourself by a label, and see others as wrong just because they don't share your worldview? This is the collective shadow at work. It thrives in division, in making us believe that our group is good and the other is evil. Jung believed that when a society refuses to face its shadow, it will create enemies to project its darkness onto. History is full of examples. The witch hunts of the past, where independent women were persecuted as threats, the demonization of entire cultures and races, turning human beings into scapegoats, the modern cancel culture phenomenon, where one mistake can lead to complete social exile. But here's the truth. The more we try to suppress darkness, the stronger it becomes. Now ask yourself, how are you contributing to the collective shadow? Reflect. Where in your life have you participated in an us versus them mentality? Have you ever labeled someone as less than because of their beliefs, status, or actions? Where do you see your own biases, fears, or judgments reflected in the world around you? The key to transforming the collective shadow starts with owning your own. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, but instead of reflecting your true self, it distorts your image. It stretches some features, shrinks others, and completely erases the ones you refuse to acknowledge. This is how projection works. Your mind is a master of disguise. When you refuse to see parts of yourself, your insecurities, your desires, your fears, it finds a way to make them someone else's problem. Instead of confronting your own darkness, you project it onto the world around you. Carl Jung described projection as the unconscious act of attributing our own suppressed traits to others. Deepak Chopra takes it further, explaining that projection is a survival mechanism, a way for the ego to avoid discomfort by placing responsibility outside of itself. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves. But how do we recognize when we're projecting? What if the things we despise in others are actually hidden within us? Projections are subtle. They slip into our thoughts, our conversations, our relationships, without us ever realizing. But there are clear signs if you pay attention. You get irritated by someone for no logical reason. Have you ever met someone who instantly annoyed you? Maybe they were too confident, too opinionated, too free-spirited. But ask yourself, why does it bother you? Is it because deep down you wish you had that same confidence, but were taught it was wrong? You feel personally attacked, even when no one is attacking you. If someone disagrees with you, do you take it as an insult? Do you feel the need to defend yourself, even if no harm was intended? This could be your shadow self reacting, not to the person in front of you, but to an old wound from the past. You judge people without knowing them. Do you ever catch yourself thinking, they're so arrogant? She's so fake. He's just doing it for attention. These judgments often reveal traits we deny in ourselves. The ego protects us by making them the problem, rather than admitting that we, too, have similar tendencies. You feel threatened by authority figures, doctors, police officers, bosses, political leaders. Do you put them on a pedestal or resent them entirely? Your relationship with authority often reflects your own inner struggles with control, power, and independence. You finish other people's sentences. If you find yourself jumping in, assuming you know what someone is about to say, ask yourself, am I really listening, or am I projecting my own assumptions onto them? You assume the worst about close relationships. If you constantly worry that your partner or friends are betraying you, even without evidence, this may be projection. Are these fears based on their actions or on your own past experiences and insecurities? To uncover your hidden projections, try this simple but powerful exercise. Think of someone you admire, a friend, a mentor, a celebrity. Write down 3 qualities you love about them. Now think of someone who irritates you. It could be a coworker, a family member, or a public figure. Write down 3 things you dislike about them. Look at your lists. The qualities you admire, they exist in you too. Even if you don't fully embody them yet, they are parts of you waiting to be expressed. The traits you dislike, they might also be within you in ways you haven't recognized. They are the rejected parts of yourself. The ones you've been taught are unacceptable. Shadow work is about owning what you reject. The more you deny these parts of yourself, the more they control you. But the moment you bring them into the light, you reclaim your power. What if the people who trigger you the most were actually your greatest teachers? What if, instead of running from these reflections, you looked deeper? Because until you own your dark side, it will always own you. What happens when you refuse to face your darkness? Your shadow does not disappear just because you suppress it. It festers, it waits, and when the moment is right, it takes control. Think about the times when you've overreacted to a situation, saying or doing something you later regretted. The moments when your anger, jealousy, or fear seem to come out of nowhere. That is your shadow breaking through the surface. Ever noticed how the same type of people keep showing up in your life? Manipulative friends, unavailable partners, toxic coworkers. That's not a coincidence. It's your unconscious mind forcing you to confront what you refuse to see in yourself. They sabotage your success. You want to start a business, pursue a dream, break a cycle, but you procrastinate, make excuses, and undermine your own progress. Why? Because a part of you, your shadow, doesn't believe you deserve success. They manifest as addiction, self-destructive habits, and toxic behaviors. The vices you turn to when you feel empty, overworking, binge-watching, emotional eating, drinking, scrolling endlessly through social media. These are all ways the shadow numbs itself. They cause emotional and physical distress, anxiety, chronic fatigue, depression. Even physical pain can be linked to repressed emotions. Carl Jung believed the body reflects the shadow. What the mind refuses to acknowledge, the body will express. Debbie Ford, a pioneer in shadow work, didn't just study this, she lived it. Her early life was marked by self-destructive behaviors. Addiction consumed her, leading her into cycles of guilt and shame. She kept trying to be better, to fix herself, but nothing worked, because she was fighting the wrong battle. Her breakthrough came when she realized the problem wasn't her addiction. The problem was the pain she had buried beneath it. Shadow work became her path to healing. Instead of running from her darkness, she turned toward it. She forgave herself. She accepted the parts of herself she once hated, and in doing so, she became whole. Her story is proof of one thing: what you refuse to face will control you. But the moment you confront your shadow, you take back your power. Ask yourself, where in my life do I keep repeating the same negative patterns? What am I avoiding that keeps showing up in different forms? If my shadow had a voice, what would it say? Write down your answers. Look at them without judgment. They are not there to shame you. They are there to set you free. But how do we go beyond just recognizing our shadow? How do we transform it into something powerful? Now that you've recognized your shadow, the next step is the most important: integration. Shadow work is not about erasing your dark side. It's about embracing it, understanding it, and transforming it into strength. Carl Jung believed that enlightenment is not imagining figures of light, but making the darkness conscious. Because the more you suppress your shadow, the more it controls you. But the more you bring it into the light, the more power you gain over yourself and your life. So, how do you begin this transformation? Observe without judgment. Every time you feel triggered, stop. Instead of reacting, ask yourself, what exactly is making me uncomfortable? Where have I felt this before? Am I projecting something I don't want to admit? By simply noticing these patterns, you begin to break their hold over you. Example: you feel irritated by someone's arrogance, but instead of dismissing them, you ask yourself, have I ever been arrogant? Have I ever felt insecure and tried to cover it up? Suddenly, what was once just an annoyance becomes a lesson about yourself. Name and own your shadow. To integrate your shadow, you must acknowledge it. Name the parts of yourself you've rejected. Write down 3 words that describe the version of yourself you never want to be. Now ask yourself, why am I afraid of these traits? Have I ever shown them before? What if, instead of fearing them, you accepted that they are simply part of the human experience? We cannot be truly free until we own all of who we are. When you make peace with your shadow, it stops controlling you. Instead of shaming yourself for past mistakes, you can look at them and say, yes, this was me. Yes, I have hurt. Yes, I have made mistakes. But I forgive myself. I am still worthy of love. Think of a time when you felt ashamed of yourself. What did that version of you need in that moment? Can you give that part of yourself understanding instead of judgment? Your shadow holds immense creative energy. What you repress doesn't just vanish. It seeks expression in other ways. Journaling, poetry, or storytelling helps release suppressed emotions. Art and music, paint, draw, or play an instrument with raw emotion. Movement, dance, yoga, or even martial arts channel your energy into physical form. Many of the world's greatest artists, writers, and visionaries have transformed their shadow into masterpieces of expression. At the end of this journey, shadow work is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. It's about looking at yourself, the light, the dark, the messy contradictions, and choosing to accept it all. Because true healing isn't found in denying your flaws, it's found in embracing them. The moment you stop resisting your shadow, something shifts. The weight begins to lift. The patterns start to change. You realize your darkness was never meant to break you. It was meant to wake you up, because when you integrate your shadow, you don't just heal, you awaken. The parts of yourself you once rejected, the fears, the insecurities, the flaws you tried to hide, they were never your enemy. They were only waiting to be seen. Shadow work is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming fully yourself, without shame, without fear, without hiding. Because the truth is, the more you deny your shadow, the more it controls you. The more you face it, the more power you reclaim. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The question is, are you ready to stop running from yourself? Because the moment you turn toward your shadow, the moment you meet it with courage instead of resistance, your life will never be the same again. Your shadow isn't your weakness. It's your greatest untapped strength. And now the work begins.